In a recent video, I made what is probably an unpopular recommendation. I declared that founders of new beauty brands should not pursue national retail distribution during the first 1 to 2 years of business. Today, I want to answer the most obvious follow-up question. If national retail can wait, what should you be doing instead? Because the first 1 or 2 years of a business are some of the most valuable years you'll ever have. Not because of how much you'll sell, although sales are important, but because these are often the years when you figure out what actually makes the business work. And if national retail is part of your long term vision, those lessons become extremely valuable a few years down the road when you land your first retail account. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Lesley, seasoned consumer marketer and founder of Brand Botany, a fractional CMO consultancy. If you're about to launch a beauty brand or if you've recently launched one, I think it's important to think beyond the next few months. And if national retail is part of your future plans, the early years of operating your business puts you closer to the customer than you'll likely ever be again. At this stage, you're seeing every order, reading reviews, answering questions, testing ideas, making adjustments, learning in real time. But once a business enters national retail, a significant amount of time and attention shifts toward supporting that growth. Before that happens, you're in a position to learn things about your business that become much harder to learn later. And that's what I want to focus on today. What I believe beauty founders should be learning, building, and refining during those first 2 years before pursuing national retail. One of the biggest advantages new brands have is something that many founders take for granted: access to the customer. Early in my career at Procter & Gamble and later at L'Oreal, the brands I worked on didn't sell directly to consumers. Products were sold through national retailers. And while we had excellent access to retail data, consumer research, focus groups, and market intelligence, we didn't have the same level of direct visibility into individual customer behavior that D2C brands have today. Today, a D2C brand can see orders come in, analyze customer feedback, review post-purchase surveys, study repeat purchase behavior, and identify patterns in real time. Because during these early years, every order, every survey response, and every customer interaction is teaching you something. Who's buying? What are they buying? Why are they buying? What problems are they trying to solve? What keeps them coming back? What nearly stopped them from purchasing? What messages resonate? Which messages fall flat? Those answers influence far more than most new founders realize. They shape how you position the brand, communicate with customers, price your products, prioritize innovation, and eventually tell your story to retailers. And here's the important part: major retailers aren't simply looking for interesting new products. The reality is that shelf space is limited. So the question isn't simply, is this a good product? The question is whether the brand has earned the place in the category. Retail buyers are looking for brands that understand exactly who they're serving, can demonstrate demand, and articulate the role that their brand plays in the category. What need is the product addressing? Who is it for? What makes it different? What is it bringing to the category that shoppers aren't already getting somewhere else? The founders that use these early years to gather those insights often show up in retail conversations with something much more valuable than a pitch. They show up with evidence. The next thing I would encourage founders and brand leaders to do is to figure out what's actually working. And I mean that literally. Not what you hope is working, not what you plan to work, not what gets the most attention on social media, but what's actually moving the business forward. One of the things I've learned over the years is that what ultimately drives growth isn't always obvious at the beginning. Sometimes the product that you expected to become the hero product isn't the ones customers embrace. Sometimes the audience you thought would be your core customer isn't the one buying most frequently. And sometimes a message you spent weeks refining barely resonates, while a simple new insight becomes the thing that customers respond to. And that's why these early years are the perfect time to look for patterns. Which marketing activities are driving traffic, engagement, and ultimately conversion? Which messages seem to resonate most? Which products are consistently driving sales? Which products get reordered? How many items are in the average order? Which products are customers purchasing together? And perhaps just as importantly, what's not working? Because understanding what isn't working can be just as valuable. Your goal is to learn, to identify the products, messages, channels, and activities that are creating momentum in the business. These insights help you to make better decisions today, but they become even more valuable when it's time to pursue national retail. And these learnings can help inform the assortment you bring to retail, the investments you make behind it, and where you choose to focus your resources. Not every product deserves broader distribution with the initial retail rollout, and not every product deserves additional investment. The early years can help you identify the products most likely to earn shelf space, drive velocity, and contribute to future growth. At some point, the work shifts from learning to improving. By now, you've spent time understanding your customer, you've started identifying what's driving demand, you've developed a clearer picture of what's working and what's not. Now it's time to start strengthening the business. One of the biggest advantages of staying out of national retail during the early years is that it gives you time to make improvements before the stakes get higher. Maybe your pricing strategy needs refinement. This is often easier to address before you're managing retailer pricing and promotional expectations. Maybe your promotional strategy isn't driving incremental sales. The early years are a good time to determine which offers actually change customer behavior and which simply give away margin. These learnings will help you build stronger promotional programs later, whether you're selling online or competing for attention on a crowded retail shelf. Maybe there's opportunities to improve margins. These improvements will become even more valuable once retailer margins and trade spending enter the equation. The point isn't to make the business perfect. The point is to make it stronger because retail distribution introduces additional costs and investments. So, for instance, trade promotions, sampling, displays and merchandising, education, inventory commitments. The stronger the business is before you take on those investments, the better position you'll be to support them. That's why I think the early years are so valuable. They give you the opportunity to make adjustments while the business is still relatively nimble, to strengthen the business before introducing additional complexity. Because the stronger the business is before you enter retail, the better position you'll be to succeed once you're there. The final area I would encourage you to focus on is capability. One of the things founders discover as their beauty brand grows is that growth creates new demands on the business. And that's why I think it's important to occasionally step back and ask yourself a simple question. What would happen if my business suddenly doubled? Not over the next 5 years, over the next 6 months. Would your team be ready? Would your systems be ready? Would your operations be ready? Because growth has a way of exposing weaknesses. A process that worked for a small business may not work for a large one. A team that can support a few hundred orders may struggle to support a few thousand. And a founder who can personally manage every aspect of the business eventually reaches a point where that becomes impossible. One of the reasons founders get excited about retail is because of the potential scale. What they sometimes underestimate is the level of capability required to support that scale. Imagine Target decides to place your skincare brand in 300 doors. Can your supply chain support it? Can your inventory position support it? Can you support education, sampling, merchandising, and retail marketing? Can you respond if demand exceeds the forecast? Those are the kinds of questions that become increasingly important as a beauty brand grows. And that's one of the reasons I think the early years are so valuable. They give you the time to identify capability gaps before they become growth constraints. Sometimes that means strengthening operational processes. Sometimes it means investing in systems and reporting. Sometimes it means improving planning and forecasting capabilities. And sometimes it means bringing in the right expertise needed to support expansion. The goal isn't to build a large organization before you need one. The goal is to understand what the next stage of growth will require and begin preparing for it. Because when that major retail opportunity finally arrives, you don't want to be figuring these things out for the first time. You want to be ready to execute, and that's exactly what these early years can help you do. In a previous video, I shared why I don't think most beauty brands should pursue national retail distribution during the first 2 years of business. Not because retail isn't valuable, and not because retail shouldn't be part of your long-term growth plans, but because I believe that those early years give you the opportunity to learn, strengthen, and prepare the business before taking on additional complexity. That's why national retail can wait, because the work you do before retail often plays a major role in what happens after you get there. I'd love to hear from you. If you're building a beauty or consumer brand today, what's the biggest lesson you've learned during your first few years in business? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.